thank you for agreeing to do this kind of interview with us. We are interviewing these beautiful folks from Embodied Truth, Monica and Dan. And the first question that I have for both of you, and obviously, Monica, I'll ask you first. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do in the world?
Oh boy. Yes. So until most recently, I was a dance educator. I guess we're just on break. I'm just on maternity break. But it feels a world apart after just having a second baby. So right now, mom is really at the forefront. But yes, being a dance and movement educator is my profession. Yeah.
And for you, Dan?
Same. So movement educator, teaching at UW Milwaukee, and then also at Lawrence. Monica and I both taught at Lawrence University through the theater department. So at UW, I'm working with the dance majors, and then also a lot of the non-majors, and then at Lawrence working with a lot of the theater majors and then the theater productions.
And maybe Dan can start in this response, and maybe you can both kind of feed off of one another. Can you talk a little bit about why you maybe wanted to be involved with Embodied Truth?
It just sounded like a delightful project. I know Daniel, so it was going to be a treat to work with him, and then it was great to, of course, meet Kimani. But you know, the subject matter was important as well, like not only parenting, but then also how we bring these kids forward in this world that we're creating together, and to have the conversations with other people that are, you know, moving and thinking through the same thing was just really a wonderful proposition to be a part of.
Same for me. In addition, I hadn't returned to performing after having Lyra, and she was about 3 years old when we started the rehearsal process. And I just thought, what a perfect environment to figure out what kind of performer I was, than in a room full of other parents. And also just the flexibility that you guys offered with having kids be part of the process, not excluded from rehearsals, and that they were part of the exploration and the journey just as much as the artistic creative process. And then, yeah. I'll go? Yeah, you wanted to be invited too? I lost my train of thought.
Of course you did. And you know what was interesting while you were talking is that, so we found out within the process, because you started dancing and then it was like, oh, we're slowing down because you were pregnant. And, you know, it's just like such a beautiful journey of like, well, we have Shay on film in your beautiful belly. It's just, we were there with you on the journey, it feels like.
Yeah, and I needed you guys to be part of that journey with me, because especially being with the pandemic more isolated, it was really rooting and grounding for me to have that with you guys.
Nice. So speaking of kind of pandemic and whatever else you feel like you want to bring into this question, what are some of the challenges for you in being a parent?
It feels like most things in the world are in question right now, and they probably should be. But it just feels a little bit like extra pressure in terms of parenting, in terms like how do we steer them in the world? How do we guide them when we ourselves are just like turned upside down? Not that you don't already question how to parent or how to steer your children, but it just feels extra right now.
Yeah.
And kind of a ongoing challenge personally is just time management, like how to balance between being there for them, being there for Monica, being present and available for work as well, and then also for myself. So it's like the balance of those is just a continual challenge, and I think it always will be, but I think that's okay. That's like part of like the figuring out. I just know for myself, I'm not very good at making a schedule and sticking to it for myself. So it's, it's part of what I'm learning with them. It's like how to make schedules, how to kind of organize the day in different ways to kind of satisfy everyone's needs in their own ways. Yeah. And that, of course, that's even shifted more with the pandemic and the new situation of now it's like we all stay under the same roof all day, every day, versus having these things where you'd have to go places and be places. Yeah.
And I feel like for us, it's almost amplified because our lifestyle was so divided before the pandemic. We lived both here in Milwaukee and in Appleton at Lawrence. And so the week was really split. Sometimes Lyra and I would be in Appleton while Dan was down here. Sometimes we'd be together in one place or the other. And we were sometimes just ships in the night. There were days at a time that we wouldn't see each other. And then we went to the opposite extreme and together all the time. So it was sort of like having to travel for work, but I was lucky enough that we were able to maintain 2 residences and I could take my kid with me to travel for work. And now we just, we stay put.
Kind of, I guess, maybe building off this question in some ways, but and thinking about the piece, and that we were really thinking about parenting, but also like reflecting on how race and gender inform and affect us as individuals and as parents. Can you just like speak to, is there any ways that race and gender, thinking about these images, have informed or affected your choices as a parent?
As far as race goes, just knowing as being white male, straight white male, that oftentimes like I don't have to think about those things if I don't want to. So that it's making the practice of acknowledging that to have those conversations, not only with myself, but then also the conversations with them, and not necessarily conversations yet, but exposing them to different situations, different media, different events, so things like that. But then, from the process of the show, it was just so wonderful to just be in the room with everyone, to share stories and to hear, like in a way, sorry if I ramble, but in a way with like, with race and in particular, if we're thinking about that, especially in the year of 2020, which so much has, percolated closer and closer to the surface, across like conversation. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second too.
Why would we lose our focus? I mean, come on.
Where was I going? Oh, that I, again, from my perspective as the heteronormative, I read a lot of the stories and I take it in through media, but then to be in the room with everyone, to just know how close at hand it actually is and hear the personal stories with the people that I'm sitting across from, rather than just reading the stories of this person from this article or hearing the story in this documentary, or so that was really important, to just be in the room with the people that were sharing their embodied truth. Yeah.
Nice way to tie it in, Dan.
Yeah. I'll bring the title back in. Yeah.
I think for myself, it was just an opportunity to like acknowledge once again our positions of privilege, and also the responsibility that comes with that privilege. So Dan, mentions being a white male and then having this little white male baby, and what what choices are we going to make to consciously, shall we say, like narrow the gap with that. But also I felt like as a parent with Lyra, I knew how to build a strong, confident young woman out of this little girl, out of this little white girl baby, whether it's just from personal experience or whatever. For some reason, I felt up to that task in a different way than I feel up to the task with Shay, a little white male. And I think it's just having to ask different questions, and it's a different societal problem in terms of like the degree in which it's been addressed. What is lovely?
Well, certainly Shay is going to have a great role model in Dan, that is for sure.
Yay. Yeah. And so with this, you're adding on to that, like education, the education factor. So we're thinking education race, education class, and education gender. So any of those combinations or all. How do these impact or inform or potentially affect your parenting and your children's development? Now it's hard because the education is not in the traditional sense, but I mean, you can think of, Lyra hasn't been to school. Has she been to school?
No, she hasn't.
So this is just like, I guess.
It's coming, right? And those kind of choices around schooling choice, especially in Milwaukee.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things that we have reservations about living in Appleton all the time. Like Milwaukee is already highly segregated. It's less diverse than I prefer. I really love living in Southern California. We went to school at UC Riverside, and there was no racial majority, which I thought was super cool. And that there were just like so many different walks of life there. And in Appleton, it just felt like there was even less opportunity for exposure in the school systems for Lyra. Now with the pandemic, we'll just see whether, when or how, shall we say, she goes to school. Like we might do a year of homeschool, or I'm not sure. She's definitely in line with like Montessori school type thinking. She's very independently driven. But we're realizing she had the opportunity to have some different kinds of play over the holidays. And we realized she's really terrible at following anyone else's suggestion or instructions. Unless she really wants to, like, she's just not going to do it. And I'm all for knowing the rules in order to break them, right? That's like the first rule of improvisation. But it's also a skill that you kind of need to have in life. So that's something that she'll have to adjust to in terms of schooling and education for sure. And I don't know if this is applicable or not, but I remember once in grad school, someone talking about, you know, many of the same conversations that we've been holding through the Embodied Truth creative practice around race and gender. And someone in grad school is saying, like, it's going to distance you from actually a lot of people you know if they don't have a similar experience from you. And I didn't really understand it at the time. But then it kind of came around to not everyone's interested in having these conversations, right? A lot of people are interested in just like keeping the same norms. And that's been something hard for me personally outside of the creative practice to kind of weather in the storm that, you know, as a nation, we're highly divided, but then I really struggle when it's on the personal front, if it's on the familial front, that we don't all at least want to talk about it or learn about it or try something different. And sometimes it feels like it comes through an exposure through higher education, that it's not the only way, certainly, but for a lot of people, that's where some of it stems from. And I don't mean to say that as like a judgmental on like what my dad calls titleitis. You have to have the title in order to like talk about these things or to like earn that rank basically. That's not what I mean at all. It's just I guess because that was where some of my first exposure to the conversations came from, or like my awareness opened up more at that point.
Can I say something to that before we move on, Daniel? Then homeschooling is a really good thing for Lyra, because if she's really invested and self-motivated and will do, then and this is the perfect time to do homeschooling, right? So it's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because you'll eventually learn that. It's great that she has that self-motivation.
I think so. I think so. Like you can always learn to follow rules if you really need to.
Exactly.
I also don't like how like one of the things that we were talking about, you know, non-movers in the theater department. One of the things that I realized by teaching in theater, 105 inches, Libby.
Woo!
Yeah.
2 and 1.
2 and 1. Cool.
And 3.
And 3.
And 12.
That part. Okay. Is like how much traditional schooling in the United States is really about policing the body and ordering them to line up, stand still, don't move, all of that. And so then I feel like so much of my work as a dance educator has been allowing people the space and giving them permission to undo that, to move your body.
I just listening to this, I realized like all the privilege that we have with the choice with education, like that we're able to potentially do homeschool with the amount of time that we have, and that
and also
even
like, we would have to kind of give up income in order to do that.
Yeah, like, and that we're able to do that. So we're really fortunate. And I guess
okay.
Yeah. Sorry. The thing I guess I worry about is, you know, when we talk about race and gender, I don't think it's just about having the talk and talking about it at home, or even watching like media that has a more diverse representation. But I think it's actually being in the world like we had with like being with people. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the thing I worry about, that I want her to, you know, be in the room with other people that have different experiences and different backgrounds and different lives. Because I think, I don't know, education is a big thing, and it's not just, it's the time spent with people just as much as anything else, I think. So, yeah. So that's, I don't know, that's something I guess comes up with that.
Kimani, do you want to ask your other question before we shift to the last two?
Yes. So can be out of being an embodied truth, what is your takeaway, or what did you get out of it? Small little something. Doesn't have to be a long, but just something, maybe a nugget, something that you're walking away with.
Just one? That's hard.
No, it doesn't have to be only one. It could be, you know.
Well, one tiny thing, this doesn't have to necessarily do with race or gender, but I remember sitting in rehearsal at one point, and I think it was Rita that said something about like, you think you know how to parent, but really you don't know how to parent until you have 2. And I've just been thinking about that as we've added number 2, trying to figure out, well, what does that actually mean, aside from having to tailor to each of them as an individual and knowing that they come already with their individuality and their personalities and their uniqueness. It's not something that we necessarily do anything but help them try to foster. So it's just been kind of curious to already realize the differences, like even in utero, the movement quality of each child was very, very different. We kind of could tell that Shay was going to be a bit more subdued than Lyra. But I just really appreciated the diversity within the group in Embodied Truth, that we were all of different ages, different races. We all live in the same town, but in different areas. And it was just so wonderful to have the conversations and share perspectives. And it was a very open and supportive environment to do this work in. And at least from my side, it didn't feel like there was friction or tension, even though these conversations have the potential to be, highly volatile in a way. It never felt like that in the conversation, in the room. It was always really wonderful to be part of it.
Yeah, I would say the first word that came to mind was joy, because it was really a joyful process. I felt like I got a lot of enjoyment out of the rehearsals, but then also I also really admire your persistence, the two of you, seeing this project through all of this, what's happened in the world, and all the changes that you had to accommodate, and to kind of see it keep on going. So I just really admire that. I just wanted to say that. And that once we had to move to virtual rehearsals and virtual meetings, like I really appreciated having that time still to see you guys and talk with everyone. We might be hitting the end of our time here.
That's understandable.
Yeah, and we have like
Two questions. And so this next question is actually a pretty short answer. If you could put your parenting approach and or experience into one word, what would it be? Let me say that again.
Yeah.
If you could put your parenting approach and or experience into one word, what would it be?
One word is hard because they can maybe come up with two or three. But, I guess.
We got nothing.
Yeah. Eclectic comes to mind just because of like, with them being so young. I guess I should explain.
You can explain.
Eclectic just because them being so young, like the changes happen so quickly between the different stages they're in, curiosities, and so eclectic.
Nice.
I would say something more along the lines of like loving or supportive, or what they label attachment parenting, just trying to establish sort of like that secure base that they can launch from.
Nice.
Can I backtrack? I lost track earlier when we were talking about the process and some of the things that were really great about it. And for many, many years, Dan and I worked collaboratively, and that was a lot of our research process for our MFA was all about creative work. And it was also nice to have it be something that Dan and I could do together, that it was the whole family. It wasn't just Dan's doing this project or I got to like go and do this thing, that it was both of us getting to do it together as a family too.
What would be one bit of wisdom you'd want to offer to your child as they become the parents, future parents? What is like a nugget of something? Here's my future right here.
I think maybe just go for it. I had a lot of fear in becoming a parent. It was really hard for me to jump in and decide to be a parent. And I think I was kidding myself, like I was meant to be a mom, but I was afraid of the things that I'd have to give up. And I have given up a lot, but it's also worth it. So I've also gained a great deal. So I think if there's any hesitation, especially from the female perspective of, you know, the imbalances in society, I'd still say go for it. Like, and the rest you just sort of figure out as you go. So to be flexible in that, go for it, and then just let it happen. Oy, what happened?
I think that would be the thing that would be most important, is like, go and try and do and see what happens. But then within that, stay curious. Like, just, yeah, that's what I try to keep on instilling for myself. And I hope it's something that gets instilled in them as they move forward. And then if and when they have kids of their own, that it's the same.
Nice.
Well, thank you all for taking the time to do this and letting us pick your brains a little bit around parenting and embodied truth.
Yes, thank you. She did. So thank you, and thank you for showing, Shay and Mike. Great to see you all together.
Well, I hope you guys get to hug him in real life someday. That's been one of the really difficult parts of having a baby during a pandemic, aside from the like health concerns. It's just like we don't get to share him in the same way, and we just wonder like who will ever get to hug him.
We will. And he might be a little older, but we will. And Shay will probably be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm sorry. I've needed this for many years."
Right? You gotta make up for last time when you do get him.
Yes.
All right. Well, you all have a good rest of your day and have a happy New Year, and we'll be in contact soon.
Yeah, thank you.
You too. Thanks.
Happy New Year.
Bye.